It's time for Comeback Sports with Brandon, the Coach Perry, and Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. Here we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Comeback Sports, our weekly talk show regarding 10 of the hottest sports topics of the week. And folks, we got a jam-packed show for you this week. Obviously, the big game coming up, the NFL Super Bowl is happening on Sunday. We got a lot of topics about that game as well, along with a couple of other sports topics that we're going to sprinkle in there for the 10 that we always talk about. But folks, this is going to be a great show. Make sure you stick around for the entire episode. Once again, folks, my name is Pat, the Shot Caller Flaherty. I'm joined by my partner, Brendan, the Coach Perry. Brendan, what's happening, buddy?
What's up, Pat? Yeah, like you said, we've got an exciting show planned. Some great topics. I know the next 2 weeks we're going to have an amazing show because there's just going to be so much to talk about in sports. So let's jump right into it. I'm excited.
Absolutely, my man. And then, folks, if you're watching this show, if you're liking what you see, make sure you subscribe to Comeback Sports on YouTube. And then in addition to that, you can also follow Brandon and I on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are at the bottom of the screen. You can see it right there. So make sure you check that out as well. But we're going to get right into it. The National Football League Super Bowl is happening this Sunday. We're going to do a positional breakdown for which team has the edge in a couple of the different positions. So, Brandon, we're going to start off with you talking about the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm lucky first that I get to talk about the quarterbacks because obviously we've talked about it on the show before, and I called it the GOAT versus the baby GOAT. And obviously Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes. You have two of the greatest quarterbacks in the game right now playing at an all-time best, playing really hot. You obviously have two of the best offenses in the game, too, with all the weapons that you have on both of these offenses. So either way, and I've always said it in the past, I love offense. I'm an offensive guy. So seeing both these two teams, I can't wait to watch a Super Bowl. But if I had to pick a quarterback and go, if I'm going to, debate who I'm going to pick between these two, I'm going to have to give the nod to Brady. I'm really going to have to give the nod to Brady over, with all the experience. I know it's pretty shocking. With all the experience, though, and the arm strength, here's the thing, and here's the difference with me. I'll take the experience and the game knowledge over Patrick Mahomes' athleticism right now. And I think that's the one thing that Patrick Mahomes definitely has over Tom Brady is obviously the athleticism. He can get outside the pocket and move around. He can run the ball, and he obviously changes the game because he can throw on the run. But I'm just giving the nod slightly to Tom Brady. This is not like a huge difference here because I know people are going to be like, whoa, this is amazing. But I'm just giving the nod slightly to Tom Brady. And like I said, it's with the game experience, the game knowledge, those 6 Super Bowl rings. He's been in the moment. He's not really going to slouch. I know Patrick Mahomes has been in 1 Super Bowl, but it's just different. I'm pretty sure there's nothing that's going to shock Brady. He's seen it all at this point. He's ready for this big moment. And like I said, that game experience and that game knowledge is going to go a long way. I'm just giving that nod slightly to Tom Brady.
Very interesting. I was going to say Mahomes has been there himself, so I didn't think it was going to be as big of a lean to Brady as you were talking about, but very interesting point. I'm going to talk about the offensive line and, who has the slight edge there, and I think it's the Tampa Bay Bucks, mainly because the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line is really banged up. I mean, they went into the playoffs not having Mitchell Schwartz. He's normally their right tackle. He's been out since week 7, I believe, with a back injury. And then in the AFC Championship game against Buffalo, Eric Fisher, the starting left tackle, tore his Achilles. So you don't have your 2 starting left tackles. And then we just found out a couple of days ago, their backup center, Dan Kilgore, is possibly part of COVID tracing, so he might not be able to play. There's still a chance he could, depending on how many negative tests he performs. But if you don't have your top 2 tackles, if you lose your starting center, you don't have your backup center, you are in real trouble. So even though Mahomes, like you mentioned, very athletic quarterback, he can kind of escape pressure pretty easily and get out of the pocket. With that Tampa Bay Bucks defense, I'd be worried a little bit if I were the Chiefs. with regards to their offensive line. Meanwhile, the Bucs offensive line's been outstanding this year. Ryan Jensen's had some problems with shotgun snaps and so forth, but other than that, they've been really good. I think Football Focus had something. They're like a top 5 offensive line this season, at least statistically. So I'm taking the Bucs offensive line in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, hey, just quickly on that, I know JPP saying he had no idea who Dan Kilgore was. So I thought that was funny. I mean, he's just throwing a little slight out there because he obviously knows who he's going to be going up against. But I agree with you. You know, having those injuries is big, and I think that's really going to affect the game. And I think Mahomes is going to have to be at his best with those backup linemen. But I'm going to go with the skills positions now, and we're going to battle that out. And this is really a tough one. I mean, this is probably just as much of a toss-up as the quarterbacks was, to be honest. Yep. And so I'm going to go slightly with just a slight nod. Once again, just a small nod. I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs because they've just got it all over the place. I mean, Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman, Travis Kelce, I think are their 3 biggest weapons that can, honestly, every time they touch the ball, they can score. Travis Kelce has been, from pro football, rated the highest rated tight end in the game since 2016. Which I found was pretty amazing this past week. But I think that says a lot, too. He's pretty much uncoverable is what they're saying, and I kind of agree with it. There's only certain guys that are going to be able to cover him, especially on that Tampa Bay defense. And then good luck trying to stay with Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman. These guys routinely run over 20 miles per hour. So good luck. I mean, you're going to have to get on your scooter to stay with them. And so I'm going to give the nod to Kansas City, even though Tampa Bay's got plenty of toys to play with.
Yeah, I think Tampa Bay's probably got a little bit more depth at the skills position, but I think Kansas City's top guys are outstanding, and there's a chance that Sammy Watkins comes back for the Super Bowl as well. And as a third receiver, Sammy Watkins is a very good third receiver. We're going to now go to the defensive front 7, and I'm going to take the Bucs. Yeah, you look at their defensive front 7. Their linebackers have been playing outstanding in the playoffs. You know, Devin White, Levante David have been great. Then you look at some of their pass rushers. You got Jason Pierre-Paul, like you mentioned, Shaq Barrett, and Ndamukong Suh in the middle. I think their front 7 is going to cause a lot of damage, even though I think the best front 7 player in the game is Chris Jones for the Chiefs. He's probably the best player out of both teams as far as front 7 players are concerned. But I think the best unit for the front 7 is going to be the Bucs. There's a lot of talent there. Devin White, as we've been playing, he could have been the MVP of the NFC Championship game, and he was great against the Saints in the divisional round as well. So, you know, ever since he came back, their defense looks totally different. They look so much better with White in there. So I'm going to go with the Bucs front 7 as the better of the 2.
Yeah, no, that's a great call. Devin White has been amazing. I can't wait to see what he does in the Super Bowl. Moving on to the secondary. So we're going to battle it out with the secondary here. This is a toss-up as well. Seems like everyone I've had is a toss-up, but, I mean, this is what happens when you get to the final 2 teams in the playoffs and it's the Super Bowl. You have the 2 best teams. You have all the best players playing at a high level. So this is a real toss-up. I think I'm going to give the slight nod to Tampa Bay. I know they're going to be getting back Jordan Whitehead, who was knocked out in the conference championship game. And also Antoine Winfield. So those 2 coming back, I think, are going to help out Tampa Bay secondary. They definitely missed them in the conference championship. I think that's going to be a slight nod to Tampa Bay with the secondary, even though the best secondary player on the field belongs to Kansas City with Tyrann Mathieu. He's just an absolute ball hawk and do everything you need. Could play the strong safety position, could play some linebacker if you needed him to. An undersized player that is underrated, I'd say, all the time, but he's probably the best player out of both secondaries on the field. But as far as a unit, I'm going to have to give the slight nod to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I think you're right with that one. And I think, again, this goes to depth. You know, I think the Bucs have the best depth in the secondary, especially if Antoine Winfield Jr. comes back. I know that his ankle's still kind of banged up. So he said he's not going to miss the game. We'll see how effective he is with that ankle. So with that being said, with the Bucs actually winning most of those matchups that we just talked about, Brandon, who do you have in the Super Bowl?
It's a tough question because, like you said, going with what we just said and even what I just said, you know, 2 of the positional groups I picked were Tampa Bay. However, I'm going to go out and pick Kansas City to win this game. I think they've been playing extremely good, even with that backup line. And I know it's got a little bit more banged up in the conference championship, but I think Mahomes has really been adjusting his game to it. He's been playing great. You got to get the ball to these weapons, even if you get it to them on a little, I think, a short slant. Tyreek Hill can take it to the house. You saw the little reverse that they ran with McCole Hardman in the conference championship, that obviously getting him the ball behind the line of scrimmage, and he's still turning it into a 50 or 60-yard gain. So I just think they've got so many weapons that are playing at a high level right now. I think their defense is going to come to play. If Chris Jones can pressure Tom Brady, I think that is going to be a huge key to the game, because I think that's what most teams have been lacking right now. If you don't move Tom Brady off the spot and you allow him to sit there and to dissect the defense, he's going to find somebody open, especially with all those weapons. But however, if you can put some pressure on him and force him to move his feet and move the pocket and try to escape, which he's obviously not that good at his age and was really never good at, it's just not part of his game, that can help you and help your defense a lot and help your secondary a lot. So I don't know. It's going to be a toss-up. This is going to be one of the best games to watch recently for a Super Bowl. And I think it's going to be, like I said, when I've said it earlier, for offenses, this is going to be amazing to watch for both offenses. But I've just got to give the slight nod to Kansas City. Tom Brady might make me regret that, but I'm picking the Kansas City Chiefs to win this game.
Yeah, you know, us being Pats fans, you can never count Brady out. But I'm going to agree with you. You know, I think the Chiefs are going to win it. I heard on some podcasts throughout the week that, you know, the Bucs almost have to play completely on their A+ game to win the game, where the Chiefs can maybe play their B+, maybe even B- game and still win. You know, the Chiefs can give up 14, 17 points in the first quarter and easily come back. You know, if Brady throws 3 picks like he did in the conference championship game, the Chiefs are going to score off those picks, unlike the Packers. And then, you know, you mentioned Chris Jones. If Brady seems to struggle when he has pressure up the middle, that's kind of been his MO since he began since he first started for the Patriots back in 2001. So if Jones can create pressure up the middle against Brady, I think that's what the Chiefs are going to be able to do to earn their second Super Bowl victory in a row. We're going to shift forward now to our next topic, though, Brandon.
Yeah, let's go. Moving on to our topic number 2 is the defenses. And will the defenses decide this Super Bowl? You have 2 great defenses playing at a high level, but they're playing arguably the 2 best offenses in the NFL. So are they going to be able to make any plays that are going to affect this game?
Yes, I do think they are. I mean, as we mentioned, you get the 2 quarterbacks. You know, the 2 positions that we talked about in that first topic were toughest to decide, were the quarterbacks and the skills positions, because they're so loaded at both positions, meaning these 2 offenses are unbelievable. But I do think it's the defense that is going to come up with a big play, or like we mentioned, Chris Jones coming up with constant pressure up the middle against Brady, or the linebackers for Tampa Bay possibly making things difficult for Pat Mahomes. You know, if the offensive line's struggling, Mahomes has to run for a couple of first downs. You have fast linebackers for the Bucs who might be able to chase him down out to the edge. So it's going to be, I do think it's going to be whose defense shows up the best that's going to win the Super Bowl. You know, even though we're probably going to see a shootout, there's going to be a handful of plays that the defenses are going to have to make to try to win this one.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. If the defense can actually make a play in a key moment, it could be the game-winning play and the game-winning moment, because I think these offenses are going to get everything that they want routinely, but it could be, like I said, that one big play, whether it be an interception or a fumble or a sack, that is just going to change the whole momentum and change the game. So it's which defense can do that, and, you know, it's tough. I mean, I love Todd Bowles as the defensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. I'm hoping that he gets another run at being a head coach, because I think he's done a great job. He did a great job when he was a head coach with a poor Jets team. I mean, look at what Adam Gase did. He did even worse as the Jets head coach. So I think Todd Bowles did great when he was the Jets head coach. He's doing an amazing job with this Tampa Bay defense. He has them playing at a great level. He has Devin White playing at a Pro Bowl level. So it's like I'm imagining Tampa Bay's defense making one of those plays, but is it going to be enough? And is it going to be that game-changing play? because, like I said, I'm still picking Kansas City to win this game. I really think Patrick Mahomes is going to be the deciding factor in this game, kind of like he was in the conference championship. Only the difference was in the conference championship was he going to play or not, and that was going to be the deciding factor. I think the deciding factor is if Patrick Mahomes plays at a high level and distributes the ball to his weapons, I think they win. If Tampa Bay can disrupt that in any kind of way, I think that gives them their best chance of being able to win.
Yeah, very interesting. We'll see how that unfolds on Sunday in the big game, Super Bowl. And one of the things that we talked about last week is what this is going to mean for these two quarterbacks, the GOAT versus the baby GOAT. And our third topic is called Brady's Dessert. And I think we're going to try to decide whether this is a new piece of cake for Brady or if it's just icing on the cake. If this is another Super Bowl win for Brady, does this really add to his legacy, or is it just kind of like that little extra nudge to just solidify that he's the GOAT?
I think it's just that extra little piece of frosting that we all like having, because it's like he's already the GOAT. He's already the greatest of all time. I think this re-emphasized how good he is, getting to his 10th Super Bowl with a completely different team, doing it in the first year that he arrives on that new team. I think that says a lot as well. So I think there is no real debate of who the greatest quarterback is of all time. It is Tom Brady. I think this is just going to be, like you said, a little bit of icing on the cake for him. If he can win that extra Super Bowl and have a 7th title, I mean, that's just amazing. 6 is amazing in itself. I don't think you're going to see any other quarterback get to 6 in our lifetime. So if he can get 7, I think that's amazing. I mean, it's just an adding another piece. I mean, and getting closer to being the Bill Russell of the NFL, I guess. But I think it's not going to change much of his legacy. It's just going to reinforce it.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is going to be a cop-out. I agree with you, but I also think that if you think about what he's doing, not only is he already the GOAT, he goes to a different team with a different set of skill players in a shortened offseason because of the pandemic. And then he goes, and if he wins the Super Bowl at age 43, nobody's ever come close to doing that. So he's setting the bar even higher than he's already set it. The bar is way the hell up there already. He's setting it even higher if he wins a 7th at age 43 with a completely different team. I don't think it changes his status. I just think it makes the bar even higher for the next guy who could try to reach him. And I think that guy, coincidentally, could be Pat Mahomes. He could be maybe the next quarterback that tries to reach that pinnacle. And that's another thing. If Mahomes gets his 2nd, then you might say that he's starting to creep up towards Brady because there's only a few guys that have their 2nd. But I think for this one, like you mentioned, Brady's legacy isn't going to change with whatever happens in this game. It only might just raise the bar to what other quarterbacks have to aspire to.
I still insist if he had those weapons in New England, he'd be playing in his 10th Super Bowl for New England.
Yep.
And so, I think that was a big difference. But it's amazing what he's done. But, we're going to move on because, like you said, Mahomes, and this is going to be a defining moment for him. Can he win that 2nd Super Bowl and put himself up there, with the greats like a Tom Brady, even though it would only be his 2nd Super Bowl? I think you have to put him up there because you've got guys like Dan Marino, that one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time that has 0 championships. So if Patrick Mahomes can manage to get a 2nd title, I think you have to put him in the top 10 because he's just defining and redefining what a great quarterback is. And especially if he can, maybe get another one down the line. And like I said, I think Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are positioning themselves to be in the contention for the Super Bowl for years to come. So, if he can win that 2nd one, I think it'll be a big deal.
Absolutely. First of all, there's only 11 quarterbacks in NFL history that have won 2 Super Bowls at least. You got Bart Starr, Roger Staubach, Bob Greasy, Jim Plunkett, John Elway, Roethlisberger, and then the 2 Manning brothers, Peyton and Eli. 3 Super Bowls. Aikman's the only one that's just won the 3. And then Terry Bradshaw and Joe Montana have 4, and then Brady has 6. So, now you're getting into this elite quarterback territory where if he wins his 2nd, he's now in a group of 12, including himself. And then if he wins his 3rd, he's in a group of really 5. So it's, if he wins this one, he's in this very elusive group. There's only 11 guys. And then from there, he'll probably win another one if he wins one again this year. So it's, his stock is just going to be on the rise. As we've been saying since he really began his meteoric rise when he first started for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Absolutely. What a great list of quarterbacks there too, man. Wow. That's some great stuff right there. I like that, Pat.
Yeah. Some of these guys, I would put Bob Greasy or Jim Plunkett in the elite quarterback, all-time top 10 list, but, good quarterbacks nonetheless. I think they're both in the Hall of Fame. So definitely guys that Mahomes is going to try to reach. Our next topic, though, is we're going to stay in the NFL, but the other big news from the NFL this week was the big trade of Jared Goff to the Rams and, of course, Jared Goff to the Lions. And, of course, the Rams are trying to acquire Matt Stafford to try to elevate their team level even more for the upcoming 2021 season. So we'll get into the particulars, I'm sure, during this discussion. But, Brandon, what did you think of the trade?
I was shocked, to be honest. I was shocked that the Rams were willing to move on from Jared Goff so quickly. A quarterback that had gotten him almost to the big game a couple of times, to be honest, with the roster that they've had. But it kind of reminds me of kind of what they did to Todd Gurley, too. Honestly, one of the best running backs in the game, and they were just quick to move on from him as well. And it could be from contract negotiations, maybe future contract negotiations, or it could just be that they just don't think that those two players are the right fit for what Sean McVay needs to go ahead and win the big game. But I was still shocked by the trade, and like I said, shocked that they were willing to move on from a young quarterback so quickly. And especially, McVay is supposed to be that offensive guru. You would think he'd be willing to kind of manipulate and develop a young quarterback, but it seems like he just wants to win now and wants that chance to win now. And Matt Stafford obviously is a great quarterback, has never had a chance to really play on a great team. Only other great players he had a real chance to play with was Calvin Johnson. And Calvin Johnson said, "This team sucks. I'm out of here." So it's like and then it was Stafford left by himself. And then there was one. And then Stafford had to go through some bad years there. And that's another thing, too. I mean, I think, one of the funny things I seen on Twitter was it was a joke of being like Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson looking at the Lions saying, how are you going to let this guy walk when you wouldn't let us walk after all these years and after everything we did? And I think that's a valid argument, honestly. And it shows the two different worlds that we live in and the two different worlds of the NFL, because it's the same situation, honestly. And the fact that they're willing to let Stafford go, but they wouldn't do it for Calvin Johnson or Barry Sanders is just absolutely absurd. Barry Sanders is a better player than both of those, by the way. And Calvin Johnson's better than Stafford, by the way. But yeah, I mean, I'm just shocked by this trade. I think it sets the tone for Deshaun Watson, obviously, and we'll talk about that going forward. But I think that's kind of the bigger story here is how it kind of sets the waters for the other quarterbacks that are going to be going on the market.
Yeah. I think this was actually the right move for the Rams. The biggest thing about Goff and Gurley, like you mentioned, was their contracts. And I think the mistake the Rams made was they just gave them too big of deals, not because they didn't deserve the money. I actually think Goff's a decent quarterback. Gurley, when healthy, is one of the best running backs in the league. He just hasn't been healthy, and who knows if his knee's ever going to be totally right. But they gave him too much money, and then that really tied them up too much. So they gave away Goff's contract. That was one of the biggest reasons they had to give up 2 first-round picks for Stafford, was not only to get Stafford, but also to give up the big money that Goff's making. The upcoming season, they're actually going to be paying, I believe, something like just over $42 million for Stafford and for the dead money that Goff is going to have on the salary cap for the Rams. But then that's obviously going to come down the following year because some of Goff's dead cap money comes down off the salary cap. But, everybody's saying they gave up too much with the 2 picks, and I get it. I always love first-round draft picks, so normally I would say no. The Rams have to win in the next 2 or 3 years. With the guys they have on their team, with Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, Robert Woods, and Cooper Kupp, their 2 starting receivers are locked. All those guys are locked up in big deals for the next couple of years. You got to win with those guys over the next couple of years. And they clearly didn't think Goff could do that. this is their next best option. Get Matt Stafford, who's been in a place where he hasn't been able to win. The team has been rough. The organization has been terrible over the past few years. Matt Patricia certainly didn't help any things. We know a little bit about him in New England. We're not huge fans of him right now, but they absolutely did the right thing. They had to make this deal. If it doesn't work, then some couple of guys named Sean McVay and Les Snead that could be out of a job in LA in a couple of years. But I think that they are going to be very competitive, if not Super Bowl contenders over the next couple of years. And we'll see what Stafford can do. I know some of the things that McVay was frustrated with Goff was they can design offenses and plays all they want, but when things break down, Goff can't really do anything else outside of the actual system of the play. Whereas Stafford, and obviously we just talked about Brady and Mahomes, when things break down, they can move to their third, fourth options and make things up on the fly and almost run the offense themselves. Goff couldn't do that, and I think that's where McVay really wanted to move on from Goff, after the last couple of seasons.
Well, here's the thing. I think the price was right, to be honest. I think the price was right because Stafford's a franchise quarterback. You don't have many of those lying around in the NFL or even on the sideline, or else teams would want him. Hey, the Patriots want one right now. So it's one of those things where I think the price was right, especially for a franchise quarterback. Stafford has got an amazing arm. That guy has got a cannon. He can still make every throw in the NFL that you need. Honestly, before Patrick Mahomes came in the game, Matt Stafford was the guy that was making those amazing throws and those sidearm throws that were like wowing you on the top tens. So I think this guy, the price was right. I think that the Rams definitely had to move on him now to try to win now, and that's the mentality, and we're seeing that. So 2 first-round draft picks aren't going to help you win now. A franchise quarterback will. So I think the price was right. And then I'd quickly like to just say, I've been saying it since the draft that Jared Goff was always better than Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz was just trash coming out of a small school, playing in small divisions against other small schools. He looked good. Jared Goff, playing in a big Power 5 school, playing in an NFL-style offense, he was always the pick that I thought, from day one. And I think this even still proves it. I think he's going to go to Detroit. I think he'll still be able to carry on his career. I'm just telling him, hey, Jared, if you're watching this, I hope you are. If you are, hit the subscribe button like everybody else. But I don't think you're going to win anything in Detroit.
And follow us on Twitter too, Jared. Yeah. No, I think Goff can still develop. I think he still has time to become a better quarterback. Detroit's got to get somebody. Actually, the Detroit offensive coordinator, I believe, worked with Goff a good amount in LA, if I'm not mistaken, or at the time they weren't in LA. But I think the offensive coordinator for the Lions has worked with Goff in the past on the Rams staff. So I think that's going to help him as well. So we'll see what happens there. And I think, but like we've been saying, I think Stafford is a good fit for the Rams. But that leads us to our next topic, Brandon, about who this could affect after this trade has happened.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying, the Patriots are left out in the cold, especially after this trade, feeling like that too. I know when I was watching TV the other day and the headline popped up that Stafford said he was willing to go to any team but the Patriots, I was like, that's a low blow. That hurts. And not from Stafford. I'm just saying that's a low blow to the organization for the Patriots because now it's saying, well, who does want to come here? And immediately I texted my brother and I said, all right, we're in trouble. We're in trouble now because if players don't want to come here, then we're really in trouble. We need to acquire players. And if the Patriots are left out in the cold another year for a quarterback and can't acquire one of these guys in an all-time epic year of quarterbacks being on the market and being, trade bait, if we can't acquire one of them, I think we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit just because, I initially thought the same thing you did when I saw that. I'm like, Stafford doesn't want to come to the Patriots. That's never been the case before with free agents. I think the one thing that we got to remember is there are a couple of factors here. One, Matt Patricia is now back on the Patriots. So you got to, he just had a miserable time with Patricia. Doesn't want to even be anywhere near him, even though I don't think Patricia will be coaching him at all. He'd probably barely see him. The second thing is the Patriots don't have anybody to throw him. So why would Stafford want to come here after leaving, at least in Detroit? He's got Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay, although those guys are free agents this upcoming season. But But, he had some weapons in Detroit. He doesn't want to come to a place where he's not going to have guys to throw to. And then third of all, from what I understand, he's from Texas. He went to Georgia in college. He doesn't want to come to a cold weather city where you're not playing in a dome. At least in Detroit, you had 9 games guaranteed every year in a dome because you play in the same division as Minnesota. So you have 9 games a year in a dome where you come to the AFC East. You're playing in Buffalo. You're playing against the Jets in New York, and then you have 8 home games guaranteed in Foxborough. Now, not all of them are cold, obviously. The fall in Foxborough, as we know, is awesome. But later on in November and January, in December, and if you're playing in the playoffs in January, it gets really cold. He wanted to go to L.A. I think that's one of the biggest things that we can take out of this, too. And then you have Brandon Cooks coming out, I think it was yesterday, it might even been today, and saying, New England's a fun play, not a fun place to play, but a good place to play. He had no problem backing up the Patriots, which I thought was interesting. Brandon Cooks came here. He was traded for by the Patriots, played 1 year. A lot of people were disappointed in him. I actually thought he played really well that 1 year with the Pats, even though he wasn't an elite receiver. He was a very good receiver, had almost 80 catches, over 1,000 yards, touchdowns, and so forth. And then it was traded away again. So they didn't necessarily coddle him or really do anything where you would think that he would love playing for the Pats. But Cooks just came out and backed him up, backed up the Pats. So I still think they're going to be able to get guys. I do think that the market's shrinking, though, and it depends on what they want to do. I think what they're going to end up doing is getting sort of like a bridge stopgap quarterback, like a Jimmy Garoppolo, who can just come in right away and run their offense the way that he knows how to, or a David Carr or a Marcus Mariota. I think those are some of the guys that they could look at who might be able to come in, run the offense, and they might draft a kid either this year or maybe in the second round this year, or a quarterback next year in the first round, and then approach the quarterback position that way. Get a veteran who can be there for a couple of years, and also get the young guy that you can develop and become the starter a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, I've got 2 things. I think if this continues, we're going to have the conversation of Belichick's time ending in New England. If it continues, I'm saying. That'll definitely be a conversation we have to have. But I think it's going to be one of those things where I think they're probably better off getting a stopgap QB right now, right? And kind of just filling in, because there are no weapons. You got to acquire maybe some weapons and acquire a QB. And I think that's going to kind of be hard in the market right now. I'd love to see them get Mariota, a young quarterback. He's still young enough that you could develop him. He's a quarterback that can get out and move the pocket, can use his legs, kind of like Cam Newton was just doing in our offense, So I think McDaniels would love to have a guy like Mariota. But I think the rumors I've been hearing, too, is that, you might see Fitzmagic. You might see Fitzmagic with his beard come in here, and that's obviously Ryan Fitzpatrick come in here and sling it around. And I wouldn't be against that, honestly, and especially if we're looking for a stopgap QB. He tends to have these great moments in the NFL where he comes in on a different team and plays great. He has some bad moments, but he tends to play lights out at times. He generates excitement with, obviously, the fans and his teammates. I hear he's a great teammate guy, a great locker room guy. So I wouldn't be against Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in. But I'd like to see them make a play. I would love to see them make a play in the draft for a QB of the future. But I'm not sure there's going to be one out there. I know we're possibly picking around 15th, right?
Yep.
It's whether or not is that something that you can dangle out there for somebody that's currently on the market, or is there any QB that's in college right now that's worth taking with that first pick? If I'm the Patriots, I take a skill player with that first pick because I need one. I need some weapons around my quarterback, and I think even with some weapons, I think a Marcus Mariota or Ryan Fitzpatrick could have a great season.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick I think would work great. I mean, one thing that we talk about the draft and drafting a quarterback as opposed to getting a stopgap guy, if they're going to have to go up and get a quarterback if they want to draft a quarterback in the first round. Jeff Howe of The Athletic wrote a great article about how you really don't get an elite quarterback in the first round unless you're drafting at number 12 or earlier. So in 12, 11, 10, and so forth, all the way down the line. There's certainly been exceptions. There's certainly been later round quarterbacks. But if you want to look at the percentages of quarterbacks that have been solid starters to Pro Bowlers to all-time greats, that's where you really need to draft a quarterback. Over the last 20 years, that's been the sweet spot, is 12 and sooner. And I don't think the Pats are going to be able to get there. I don't think they want to trade up that much draft capital to go from 15 to 12. To move up in the first round, it's really hard. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think what they're going to end up doing, like you said, they'll pick the best player available at 15, get a stopgap quarterback, and then maybe draft a guy in the second round or the third round. I know a guy like Jamie Newman from Wake Forest, the Pats are a fan of. They might take him second and third round, just see what he can do if they take a Waddle or somebody like that at 15. So that'll be interesting. We've been mentioning quarterbacks this whole time, and the guy that we keep talking about is our seventh topic of the week, and that's the Deshaun Watson situation. The Goff and Stafford trade now really sets the benchmark for the Deshaun Watson trade that we've been saying all along is going to happen. It's going to happen at some point. There's no way that Nick Caserio is going to let him sit out the beginning of the season. Caserio, I think, is just kind of, trying to keep everything close to the vest, doesn't want to give anything away. That's why he's saying he doesn't want to trade Watson, but I think he's just looking for the best offer. John McClain of the Houston Chronicle came out this week and said that, and he's pretty plugged into what everybody else says in that Houston Texans organization. He said it's going to start at 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, and 2 defensive starters for Deshaun Watson. Huge package.
Yeah, I saw that exact quote, and I said that's exactly it. I think that's the exact price. And it's going to be – I want to know the team that's going to be willing to pay that, because that's an epic price. But I think, like I said, he's a franchise quarterback, and he's arguably one of the best quarterbacks of all time. When you look at his stats, and I know he hasn't won the Super Bowl, he hasn't won the big game yet, he hasn't been given the chance to on a roster, on a team, to do that. If you put this guy with some weapons around him or on a team, like if he was playing for Tampa Bay, I'd be picking Tampa Bay. If he was playing for Kansas City, I'd be picking Kansas City. And he's kind of like Patrick Mahomes. They're very similar. They're like arguably like 1 and 1A when you're talking about young quarterbacks. And so I just think it's one of those things where I think, the price was set with Stafford, an older quarterback who's at the end of his career, still with a price tag of 2 first-round picks in a starting QB swap. I think that showed that Deshaun Watson, you're at least going to have to swap or position upgrade. And I say position upgrade, and that's where the 2 defensive starters come in, because now I'm upgrading 2 defensive starter positions, and then I'm still going to get 2 first-round picks in return. I think that is probably the price that is legit, and I think it's 100% fair for a guy like Deshaun Watson, who's going to come in and change your organization. And not only is he going to change your organization on the field, he's going to change it off the field, okay? This guy, like we said, is a franchise quarterback. He can do it all, and he's the poster boy of the NFL, in my opinion, honestly. I had sent you most recently over the past week all the things that he's done just with charities off the field. So I just think this is a guy that everybody loves. And, I've got to buy myself a Deshaun Watson jersey when he moves to his next team.
I was going to say, wait till he moves. Don't buy a Texans jersey.
Don't want to buy it now. But when he gets to his new team, I'm going to buy myself a jersey, because he's that great of a player. And he is a franchise QB. I think the price is worth it. Obviously a steep price, but I think it's fair.
Yeah, you could buy a Clemson Deshaun Watson jersey. Then you can't go wrong, because that's never going to change. His alma mater. I agree. I think, the team that can put forth the best trade package for Watson is the Jets. Everybody's talking about the Jets. If you look at the 2 first-round, the Jets have 2 first-round picks this year. One is the second overall pick in the draft. So obviously Houston's like second overall pick. We could take Justin Fields, Zach Wilson. If they love Trey Lance, take Trey Lance. I think it's going to be Wilson or Fields. And then they have the 27th overall pick in the first round later on in the draft after trading Jamal Adams. So that's Seattle's pick at 27. Then their second round pick is 34th overall. So it's the second pick in the second round. So that is 2 picks away from being a first round pick. So you now have 3 picks in the top 34 picks of the draft to go to Houston. They might not need that second round pick, and then you send 2 defensive starters. Some people talk about Leonard Russell being one of them. If I were the Jets, that'd be tough to give up, but I think I'd still do it. And then maybe one other guy over to Houston for Deshaun Watson. And then you have an elite quarterback locked up till Watson's under contract till 2025. He's got a couple of years where he's making over $40 million a year. That's a lot of money. I think he might be the highest paid quarterback at that point. But then in his final 2 years of his deal, 2024, he's making $37.4 million. In 2025, he's making $32 million. 3 or 4 years down the line, we're going to be away from the pandemic. Hopefully, we'll be completely out of this thing. I think that the salary caps will continue to go up, and $37 to $32 million, that's not going to be as big of a number as it looks right now for a elite top 5 quarterback. So if I'm the Jets, I do that.
Here's the thing, though. Remember, Deshaun Watson has control over it because of the trade clause.
Right.
So does he want to go to a team like the New York Jets that has arguably less weapons than he did at Houston? A team that is a bottom feeder, a team that has lost so many games over the last few years, and they just don't even have many players. So it's one of those things where I think Deshaun Watson, he was smart, and his agent was smart, obviously, putting that no trade clause in his contract because he has a lot of say on where he's going to go. One of the places he wants to go is Miami. So they're going to have to try to work out a deal with Miami. And, I completely get it. And I think you're 100% right with the Jets, especially with that second pick and those 2 first-round picks. I think they do have the most capital to be able to move on a franchise quarterback like Deshaun Watson. But with Deshaun Watson having the ball in his court and being able to control everything, I think you're more than likely going to see a move to Miami or a team that is going to have a chance to compete over these next few years and has a few weapons for him already in a place like Miami where you can go to South Beach. Kind of like you said, Stafford didn't want to come to New England and play in the snow. He wanted to go to L.A. and chill on the beach. I think Deshaun Watson's in the same boat. And I'd arguably say Deshaun Watson is in more of a power play than Matthew Stafford right now. So I think he's in full control. I can't wait to see where he goes. And then this is the biggest thing. Just like when James Harden got traded, everybody's phone's going to blow up when Deshaun Watson gets traded. And we got to wait to see where it's going to be. I think it'll be over these next couple of weeks. Once the Super Bowl madness kind of quiets down and you're not expecting much to happen, I think that's when that trade's going to kind of go through. And I'm expecting to have it be one of those big, epic, all-time trades that we'll have to discuss. Was it worth it or not in the end? But I'll tell you right now, whatever you trade for this guy, it's going to be worth it. So no matter what a team trades for them, it's going to be worth it. I'm looking forward to seeing if they get those 2 first-round picks in return. But moving on to our next topic number 8 of the night, a legend passing. And we covered a few legends on our last show passing, and we're going to cover another one in John Chaney, legend of college basketball, legend at Temple University, and just what a great coach, what a great guy. Sad to see him go. What do you got to say on that, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a longtime staple in college basketball. He passed away at 89, so lived a full life. I'm sure he has no regrets about his life at all. I didn't like him at first because I'm from Massachusetts, and in the early to mid-'90s, I was loving the Refuse to Lose UMass Minutemen with Marcus Camby, Carmelo Travieso, Edgar Padilla, Lou Rowe. John Calipari was the head coach, and him and Chaney got in a couple of squabbles, shall we say, after a couple of heated A-10 battles with Temple taking on UMass. I actually saw a tweet from earlier today, or it might have been yesterday, of Calipari. Later on, probably even recently, the two of them kind of reenacted like a choke with one another. They actually became friends a few years after their incident during a press conference at the end of a UMass Temple game. So good to see those guys had reunited afterwards and actually got closer. Because I don't think Chaney's the first guy that's wanted to strangle John Calipari. But Chaney was a staple in college basketball. I believe it was 29 seasons at Temple. They either made the NCAA tournament or the NIT every season that Chaney was there, except for his very first season when he had to turn things around. And he also won the A-10 tournament, I think, 6 times. A10 champs. That gives you an automatic bid, obviously, to the NCAA tournament as well. Well over 500 wins at Temple. He also has some Division II college wins. So he's up there with some of the greats. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame and the College Basketball Hall of Fame. So just another one of those all-time greats.
That fight, or that I should say, it didn't really turn into a fight, but that moment with John Calipari, I had to watch that over this week like 6 or 7 times because it was just so funny to me. You know, that was back then, and I call it like the prime years of basketball, right, where it wasn't so soft per se. I think basketball has turned into a soft, especially in the NBA and in NCAA. It's turned a little soft. But even the coaches, right? I mean, you don't see a moment like that in sports anymore, right? I mean, he threatened, he literally said, "I will kill you," okay, as he was going after Calipari in that press conference.
He only got suspended 1 game.
Yeah. That's crazy. Like you said, if you do that now, people will call for you to be dispatched permanently instead of just being suspended for 1 game. So I think it shows how much things have changed over the time, you know. But I like that. I mean, that was the fire that made you want to play for that man, right? And it goes underneath the same category as a Bob Knight. When Bob Knight would get fired up, that's what kind of made them the legends that they are, is obviously the era that they coached in and how it was allowed. And it was honestly, it flourished. Basketball flourished underneath that. But then all the wins, and then just like I said, he put Temple University on the map. He put Temple University on the map, and I don't think anybody's ever been able to really do that the way he has. And, hey, if you're an Owls fan, you might not like hearing this, but I don't think Temple University is ever going to be as good again. And because I don't think you're going to ever have a coach that's good again, and I don't think you'll ever see a Temple University team in any sport that's going to be as good as those teams that John Chaney had during the 80s and during the 90s. And I think, like I said, one of the greatest coaches of all time, definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Like I said, put Temple on the map. Players wanted to go to Temple University because of this guy. A lot of people should be thanking him, especially Temple University should really be thanking this guy for getting them that exposure, for getting them their players, for having all those glory years of being in the limelight of college basketball. But you have to put them up there with the greats of Krzyzewski and Bob Knight and Jim Boeheim and some of the greatest coaches of all time in college basketball. John Chaney's up there with them.
No question. And it's a smaller program. It's not a blue blood. So, you know, you're looking at, the recruiting base is probably a little smaller. Temple's a great school, so you can't just kind of pick whoever you want either. So Chaney did a great job, and he's certainly going to be missed in college basketball. So certainly a tough day for the Temple community, but certainly lived a great life, 89 years old, and a lot of wins on the college basketball court. Our last 2 topics are a little off the beaten path. They're not 100% sports, but they definitely involve sports. And our next topic we're actually going to talk about is Nike coming out with a hands-free shoe. The Nike Go Fly Ease hands-free shoe is coming out this year. I don't know if it's the summer or the fall. I can't remember exactly when those are going to be coming out, but I did check those out online, and it's just interesting how much shoes have evolved, across the entire landscape. This shoe, I believe, is going to be more of like a casual, almost like a Skechers type of sneaker. But I can't imagine this not then, a few years down the line, if they're popular, then Nike moving forward with this to athletic shoes, whether it's basketball shoes, cross trainers, cleats, even. This could start a completely different type of shoe in footwear, but also in sports.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if they can continue to improve the technology, I can't see why they wouldn't incorporate it in some of their other shoe designs. But I mean, right now it's definitely designed to be more of a casual shoe, more of like a slip-on. But I know I'm definitely going to be buying a pair as soon as they're available. They look awesome. They look amazing, and they look comfortable. As long as they're comfortable, then you can just, chalk me up for a pair, Nike. If you want to send me a pair right now, I'd love that, And hey, Nike, subscribe to this show, follow me on Twitter, send me a pair of those hands-free shoes. But I think the real big story here is how they were developed. A gentleman that had cerebral palsy wrote into Nike in 2012, and he had said, how he was having trouble putting on his shoes and he couldn't go through his normal life with shoes and even finding shoes. And he was a big shoe guy like most of us are. And so he wanted some cool designer shoes and some Nikes. And then here it takes almost 10 years later for Nike to actually make that into reality. But I think hats off to Nike for doing that. I'm extremely proud of them as a company. I'm a huge Nike fan. Obviously, I'm wearing an Adidas shirt right now. But I love Nike. They're one of my favorite brands. Adidas is great. Under Armour is great. I'm not knocking any brand right now. I love you all right now. But Nike is a great brand. I hope some of these other brands can follow in their footsteps and develop some shoes like this, because I think it's game-changing, especially for people with disabilities. And I think really that is why Nike deserves the hats off for this one, because it's a game-changing move that's going to help a lot of people's lives. And, I mean, thank you, Nike. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, our producer, Ben Kudo, putting up a video of those slip-on shoes right there, as you can see. And, you know, those things look pretty sweet. I wouldn't be shocked if basketball sneakers got like this. You know, we've gone so far with basketball. I remember playing basketball as a youth, and I remember when the Sean Kemp Kamikazes came out, right? The zebras that everybody wanted. I bought those things. I wore them on the basketball court, and they looked really cool. They were freaking heavy. I remember trying to run around in those things like it wasn't functional. You know what I mean? These, you know, shoes have come such a long way where players are so involved in the technology of the shoe and how it fits and how comfortable it is and how light it feels, that I think this will trickle into professional sports just by looking at that and by looking at that technology that Nike has developed. I wouldn't be shocked if that trickled into sports at some point in the next 10 years.
Pair of those kamikazes. Those kamikazes were hot, man. So that the fact that you even had them is awesome. But you're right. It wasn't a shoe that was designed for the actual sport that they were claiming it was designed for. And hey, I think a lot of the companies have done that with a lot of different brands for, you know, athletes, where you're like, once you get the shoe on, you're like, I can't actually play basketball or football in these things. But I just think that's awesome that you brought up the kamikaze. I mean, my all-time shoe is the Jordan 11. I love the Jordan patent 11s. And obviously, you know, the Jordan brand's huge. But I think you're right how the athletes have had a lot of say in the development. I think one of the athletes that, or I should say two of the athletes that had the biggest say in the development of their shoe is obviously Michael Jordan, number one. But then two is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was huge in the development of every single shoe that he had. And unlike those kamikazes, Kobe Bryant made sure that his shoes were going to do exactly what he wanted them to do on the court, and that they represented him well and represented his brand well. So I think Nike is, like I said, I think they've hit a huge market here with this hands-free shoe. I think it's going to be a hit, and not only with, like I said, people with disabilities, that it's going to be a game-changing for them, for their life and for their disability, and help them, like, you know, obviously have a better life, which is huge. But I think guys that are like me and you are going to still want them. All the shoe gurus are going to want them. So I think they hit it on the head with this one. I think this is going to be a huge hit for Nike. I can't wait until they're on the market. I'm definitely going to buy a pair. I'm looking forward to seeing many different designs. And like you said, looking forward to the evolution of it and what they're going to do with that technology. But moving on to our final topic of the show, you know, a show where we've had some technical difficulties. Took us a little bit to get going. Appreciate you guys hanging in with us. If you really like what you saw on the show, make sure you give us a subscribe. Give us a like to the show. Make sure you come back every week to watch the clips and the cut-ups of the show. And give us a follow on Twitter, because we've got a lot more coming for you. And I know next week's show is going to be amazing after the big game, after the NFL Super Bowl. But with our final topic, we're going to bring up another exciting topic, and that's the coming back of NCAA football. EA Sports announced yesterday that they're going to bring back the historic franchise of NCAA football. I know I was amped. I was extremely excited when I saw this tweet. I made sure I texted you and Ben and said, we have to do this on the show. And I think it's an amazing topic, and I think a lot of people are going to be excited about it.
No question. I remember when you know, back in the heyday, like 2005, 2006, NCAA football was great. I remember playing that, and I used to play that more than I played Madden. I mean, it was that good back then. I loved playing the option in the NCAA football where you don't really use that in Madden. And it was kind of a way also they didn't have the names on the back of the players' jerseys, but you kind of knew who was who, especially if you knew college football a little bit. And it was another way to kind of, see who guys were, because sometimes you'd play with certain players and you're like, why is this dude like a 95 rating on NCAA football? Then you go find out it's like Julio Jones or something like that. So, I think that's a fun part of it too. And then they show all the different stadiums when you're playing NCAA football. And I remember even the first time I played it, I was in college. I went to Northeastern University in Boston, right? And at the time, Northeastern had a Division I football team. So I remember playing with Northeastern on that game, and it was great. It was like playing with the school that I was at. I mean, it was just a very fun experience. I love NCAA football. I'm glad they're bringing it back.
Northeastern will not be in this year's game, obviously, because they canceled their football program, which is sad to me. That's another topic we could have on this show in the future, because that was real sad news for me. But yeah, they won't be in this year's game. And that's another story, is that it actually won't be this year's game, because shortly after that, they came out with an announcement saying that it's going to take a few years, quote unquote, to develop the game to the point where they want to. And I get it. They're not going to just rip Madden and rip the protocols of Madden and just kind of cut and paste Madden. But I think they already do have a nice little cornerstone of the game, because in Madden you had the face of the franchise moment where you had to pick a quarterback and had him go through college at a couple of games there, and you got to play NCAA football. And I think that was the first point where you said this game might come back, because they had kind of sprinkled that into Madden, and it's good to see that it is coming back full time. But I'm just like, hey, EA, why is it going to take 2 years or a few years, in your words, to kind of put out a game that you have all the blueprints for? You just got to make a few adjustments, get them ready for this generation of consoles, and like, hey, put it out there. Your fans have been waiting for 7 years. We've all been waiting long enough, EA. It's now time. I know we were all excited when the news came down, but then you kind of rained on our parade a little bit when you told us it was going to be a few years. So I'm just kind of waiting to see what the next development announcement is going to be on the game. But I definitely think it's an exciting announcement. I'm glad to see it coming back. And I think, what's that guy's name there from UCLA there? The guy that ruined it for everybody.
I'm trying to think of who you're talking about.
The guy that ruined... the O'Bannon brothers.
That's the O'Bannon brothers. Yeah,
O'Bannon brothers that ruined games for everybody because they wanted to be so greedy and get paid for their likeness. I get it, Ed O'Bannon, but you had to ruin the game for 7 years, ruin everybody's fun for 7 years. I hope you got some money, Ed O'Bannon. I hope you're doing good right now, Ed O'Bannon. Hey, Ed O'Bannon, subscribe to this show because I'll probably trash you a little bit more for trashing NCAA games. But yeah, I'm excited that the games are coming back, and I think a lot of other fans are too, and I think it's time. It's due. People were calling for it last year during the pandemic when everybody was sitting home, because the most exciting part of that game is developing your team, recruiting players, getting on the road and recruiting players, seeing if you can get that 5-star from Providence, Rhode Island to go to Navy or to go to URI. So that's one of the most exciting things. I'm looking forward to starting a dynasty with Florida State. I've always said that's my team. So I'm looking forward to jumping in there. But yeah, exciting news for that game to be coming back.
Yeah, and I think it's going to help the interest of college football. The last 10 years especially, I think we've been so hyper-focused on really either the SEC or Clemson. It's really been, whether it's Alabama, LSU, or Clemson, or Ohio State, we'll sprinkle them in there as well. This might expand the appreciation for the other programs. This might expand, this might help get more attention back on the Pac-12. This might get more attention, back on the Big 12 down south. We'll see if Texas can finally get that program back to where they used to have it. And I think some things like this often drum up more interest in particular sports, especially with the younger generation. So that's going to be a lot of fun. That's it for our 10 topics, but I believe we do have a reader email this week. So I'm not sure if our producer, Ben, is going to bring that. Absolutely. There we go. So here we go. I'm going to read this one off. This is our reader email. And by the way, Drew from Roxbury, thank you so much for sending us an email. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you watching. We hope you subscribed, and we hope you keep following us here on Comeback Sports. Our question of the week from our emailer is, do you think Bill Belichick regrets running Brady out of town? Once again, thanks from Drew from Roxbury. Really appreciate it, my friend. Hard to say. That's a very loaded question. Everybody's been talking about it this week. Brandon, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I think that's debatable if Belichick actually ran him out of town. And I think so maybe the wording of that is debatable. I think obviously seeing that his quarterback is playing in a 10th Super Bowl on a new team, I'm sure he's regretting it to a certain extent. I think you have to as a coach, as a human being. I mean, as a fan, as being anything involved in the Patriots, I think everybody's like, yeah, hey, we're regretting letting him go a little bit. But I think it's one of those things where it's debatable because he arguably wanted to move on Brady earlier with the whole thing with Jimmy Garoppolo, and Robert Kraft prevented him from moving on that earlier, and obviously we traded Garoppolo instead. We got that extra year with him. So I think it's debatable whether or not he wanted to move on from him earlier than he did, realistically. But I wouldn't say that he necessarily ran him out of town. But I would go back to thinking that you have to have the weapons around these guys. There were no weapons around him. I think that's realistically what was the thing that ran him out of town. I mean, at one point, this guy was playing with the likes of, Randy Moss and Rob Gronkowski. And then the last year that he's with us, he's playing with, a shell of former players that were just garbage pretty much. So I think that would be the main reason of what actually ran him out of town. Obviously, they didn't want to give him the money too, but I think Brady had a chance to say, hey, I'll stick around for that little bit of less money so I can retire with the franchise that I started with. And I think it was just, hey, he didn't have the weapons. He had the confidence in himself of getting back to that Super Bowl. He just knew he needed the weapons to do it, and here they are, and here he is.
I got a thought on that with with Belichick. He basically has been trying to get Garoppolo into place there for a couple of seasons, and Tom really seems to spit the bit with that. And I think that when you're kind of looking at how things line up, Garoppolo seemed like he wanted to be ready to start and to get some playing time and get a contract. And that was happening at a time when Brady wasn't ready to give it up. And so now at this point, we're in no man's land. And I don't see any way out of it right now. So I think as far as Belichick regretting it, I think Belichick should have advocated and gotten Brady back here to finish out his career while he lined up that next quarterback. And hopefully the next time it would have synced up. But I bet the conversation around the Belichick dinner table is probably pretty quiet these days. So hopefully a brighter future.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a fun Super Bowl watching experience for Belichick no matter what happens because he's not in it this year. I think you're right. I think what happened, too, is Belichick thought he had the next guy in Garoppolo, and he thought Brady was almost done in 2014, and then maybe even especially in 2016, Brady kept playing above and kept kicking the can down the road as when his playing days were over. He kept playing well, and he's still playing well. He's not the same guy he was 3 or 4 years ago. We know that, but he's still one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL just because of what he knows on the field, and his arm is still there. We saw with Peyton Manning, especially in that 2015 season, we saw when his arm was just done. He ended up winning a Super Bowl that year because of an awesome defense, and because of his brains, he was able to run the offense still and make a couple of throws that he had to, but his arm was shot. Brady can still fire that football, so he can still do it. I think he's continued to defy how long he's going to be effective as a quarterback, and he's even defied the expectations of Belichick. On top of that, what you said, Brandon, is absolutely true. There was nobody for him to throw to. I think the Patriots were kind of in a salary cap, a tough spot with the salary cap. We saw it with Tooney where they only franchised him. They didn't have Gronk anymore. There's some debate as whether Gronk would have come back or not, but then Brady told him not to. So I think time just kind of ran out. These guys have been together. They were together for 20 years. So after 20 years of a relationship where you're seeing somebody that much, and they're both these incredibly confident men in this sport full of confident men, and at some point the rubber is going to meet the road, and they're just going to be done with each other. I think that's what happened. I think Brady kept saying, I keep giving up money every year, and you're not investing into the wide receiver position. We have Gronk, we have Edelman. Now that Edelman and Gronk are getting a little bit older, they didn't bring that next guy in. So I think Belichick's, tough picks in the draft, not really hitting on a guy of an offensive skill position player, and also not really going out and getting a guy in free agency is probably what hurt the relationship the most. And Brady might have stayed if they had that next guy to be that elite weapon. So I think that's what happened there. And I definitely think Belichick regrets it, but also I think he felt like he had to let him walk because of the situation. So it's complicated as usual when you're talking about the Patriots. Very complicated.
Quick food for thought for both of you guys on both of those things. I think, Pat, you nailed it on that topic of, like you said, Brady was taking pay cuts every year with the thinking that, hey, you're going to go ahead and use this money to acquire some weapons, and they didn't actually do it. Like Robert Kraft used it for whatever, who knows what, his personal life, because they didn't use it on any weapons. So I think that was huge with, like you said, Brady wanting to move on. And then I think another food for thought is look at Jimmy Garoppolo now. I think, he said he wanted to be the starter, got the chance to be the starter, didn't do so well, and now San Francisco is even willing to move on from him and to separate ways with him. So I think that shows that Jimmy Garoppolo would have been better off playing that backup role a little bit more, developing and learning from Tom Brady. The Patriots would have been in a better situation. We all would have been in a better situation, but look at us now.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Brady and Garoppolo have the same agent, so you couldn't really, he's going to try to get Garoppolo a starting position and a lot of money, and he's going to try to do the same thing for Brady, so it's tough to keep them together for that long.
Hey guys, I'm gonna sign out here from the lab, but don't forget to give it a subscribe and a like, and you guys are doing a great job here tonight. So I'll take in the rest of the show from here. So, all right, guys.
Ben, thank you so much, man. And Ben had a lot of work to do as the producer and director of this show. We had some stuff going on. That's why we came on late. But not Ben's fault. It was more technology based, and we won't mention whose technology was giving us fits. But we were certainly glad that everything worked out later than expected. But another great jam-packed show once again, Brandon, with all the sports content that's going on.
Yeah, no, this was a fun show. I was really looking forward to it, and I think we delivered with some great topics. I think next week is arguably going to be even better show, recapping the Super Bowl and recapping this great week of sports. So I'm really looking forward to next Wednesday, and I hope everybody else is too. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you come back every Wednesday.
Absolutely. Every Wednesday at hopefully 8 o'clock. Every Wednesday night, we got a lot we're going to talk about in the next few weeks. NFL's still got a lot of personnel things going on. It's only going to continue more even after the Super Bowl. We'll obviously talk about the Super Bowl. The NBA is in full swing. Hockey's in full swing. We'll get back to that. One of Brandon's favorite topics of F1 racing. Their season's going to start in the next few weeks, at least, the preseason side of F1 racing. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Folks, thanks again for joining us here on Comeback Sports. We will see you next time. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on Twitter. Have a good night, everybody.